They cannot write, as an employee, they cannot write letters, but the warden is allowed, he is an ex officio. The warden or his designee is an ex officio member of the board.
Okay.
So he sits at the board, and every time they will ask the warden's input, or a deputy warden, or they will ask their input, tell me about this person. And so they will ask, and that also it goes a long way. And you know, there are some other factors when you go into a parole hearing. It's almost automatic for law enforcement or the district attorney of the jurisdiction where the crime happened to oppose. But there's two different types of opposition. There's blanket opposition where they just they notified, they sent a letter and say, we oppose. For the record, we oppose. And then there's the opposition where I saw that, where they show up in person and say, this is absolutely not. This is, and let me tell you about this guy, and let me tell you about this crime, and where they have some very adamant law enforcement. I saw a case not long ago where the sentencing judge, 42 years later, the sentencing judge wrote a letter to the board asking that he be denied. The sentencing judge, the trial judge. So this was, that's some pretty significant opposition, 42 years later. So whatever effect it had on him, he was adamant. So that kind of opposition. Then you have the other factor, victim opposition, which is, you can't even measure that, because it is, I've seen the rare case where, in spite of victim opposition, someone was granted because their records were just exceptional, and law enforcement didn't oppose. And again, victims have the right to feel how they feel. But to an individual victim, I understand. To an individual victim who's affected, there's statistics don't matter. All they know is that they've been affected. And it's unfortunate that the system perpetuates their hurt and so often perpetuates their anger by pointing them as the trigger to the judicial process, as opposed to, not to say that the person who committed the crime, who hurt them or their family, isn't responsible, but they keep them constantly hurt and constantly angry. So if it's 30 years later and they're coming up for parole, or they're coming up for clemency, there's the victim 30 years later, still being stoked by the district attorney saying, I still fear, regardless of whether this person is a career violent criminal or a first-time offender, and they do have a right. I was the victim of a violent crime, and I know how I felt. I would have pulled the switch in the beginning. That is how angry I was. It is also somebody who I just, as I saw myself in other people's eyes, particularly my children's, it's like, who am I? I don't even know who this person is, because I can't relate to anyone anymore. I am totally focused on anger. And I'm not saying everyone can get by past that, but it helps if you don't have somebody in your ear perpetuating that. And you got them helping to heal, or you're faced with, well, what do I do now? Tomorrow I have to get up and figure out life. After this tragedy, someone was taken from me. Now what do I do? And someone says, well, you got to sign this paper, or you got to go down to Social Security, or that's the last thing you want to do. That's what victims need help with. Dealing with all the stuff, and you don't think they get angry because they have to deal with this on their own because someone else is in their face, telling them what they should feel. Now, I'm not going to tell anyone what they should feel. They have a right, because I know how I felt. I just know that a lot of prayer and a lot of and some time and the looks in my children's faces helped me get past that. And to this day, please don't make me the decider of whether someone gets out of prison or not. Someone who has offended me, hurt me. I would never want to be that decider. I don't think that power should be mine, because 20 or 30 years later, my personal bias, and some victims forgive and absolutely support that change and release, and others don't. But I don't know that they should be heard. I don't know that they should be the decider.
That's correct.
I agree.
what would
Well,
that
other
look
states do have that. Other states say, okay, here's, and I don't want to make it as glib as a check the box, but okay, this, okay. Now, the subjective part still has to come in, I think. But if you can sit there and weigh it to where if you can check all the boxes, it would be very hard to deny someone